The first time Ryan noticed something was off, it was small. So small that most people would have ignored it. A shift in Sarah's tone when she spoke to him. A delayed response to a simple question. She had always been quick with words, sharp and charming. But lately there was a hesitation, an almost imperceptible pause, as if she were calculating the weight of each syllable before speaking. At first, he dismissed it. Work had been stressful and their schedules barely aligned anymore. Maybe that was all it was. Exhaustion, distance creeping in like an unnoticed draft in an old house. But then came the late nights. The hushed phone calls in the other room, the unexplained expenses on their shared credit card, restaurants he'd never been to, charges at hotels that made his stomach tighten with dread. Still, he said nothing. Not because he was in denial, but because Ryan wasn't a man who reacted on impulse. He observed, he analyzed, he planned. The real confirmation came not from Sarah herself, but from the world around them. A shift in the way people spoke to him. Co-workers who suddenly hesitated before making eye contact. Friends who danced around certain topics in conversation. And then the whispers, the half-sympathetic glances, the knowing smirks from people who used to admire their marriage. One evening, as he stood in the break room at work, he overheard two colleagues talking just a little too freely, unaware of his presence. "Yeah, it's sad, but honestly, I get it. He's so emotionally checked out. She deserves better," one of them murmured. Ryan didn't move, his fingers tightening around the coffee cup in his hand. "I heard she tried to talk to him, but he just shut her down," the other replied. "And Jake? God, he treats her like a queen." Jake? Ryan barely remembered walking out of the office that day, his pulse slow and steady, even as his mind raced. He didn't need to ask who Jake was. The name alone was enough to confirm everything. Sarah had done more than cheat on him. She had crafted a narrative, flipped the script before he had a chance to react. She wasn't just unfaithful, she was laying the groundwork to make him the villain in his own story. That night, as Sarah came home, 20 minutes later than usual, her perfume just a little too strong, Ryan greeted her with a slow, easy smile, a smile that gave away nothing. "How was your day?" he asked, voice steady. Sarah barely glanced at him as she slid off her heels. "Exhausting. Work was a nightmare." Ryan nodded, taking a sip of his drink. "I bet." He knew then what he had to do. He wouldn't argue, he wouldn't defend himself, he would let her think she had won. And then, when she least expected it, he would destroy her. Ryan didn't confront Sarah. He didn't demand explanations, raise his voice, or show any signs of suspicion. That wasn't his style. Instead, he became quieter, more observant. If Sarah noticed the shift in his behavior, she must have mistaken it for detachment. The same detachment she had told their friends about, the lie she used to justify her betrayal. She had no idea that, in reality, Ryan was watching her more closely than ever before. He started small, a glance at her phone screen when she wasn't looking, careful not to linger too long. She had gotten too comfortable, too confident in her deception. She no longer bothered to hide the way she smiled at her messages, her fingers typing quickly, then locking the screen before setting the phone face down on the counter. The first real crack in her facade came one evening when she stepped into the shower, leaving her phone unguarded on the bathroom sink. Ryan heard the water running, the glass door sliding shut. He gave it a few seconds, just to be sure, then moved swiftly. He picked up the phone. The screen was locked, of course, but Sarah, for all her cunning, had one fatal flaw. She underestimated him. She thought she was smarter, more careful. That was her mistake. Ryan didn't need to unlock the phone to get what he wanted. Instead, he tilted it slightly, angling the screen just right under the light. A single notification was all it took. "Jake, can't wait to see you tomorrow. I miss you." The weight in Ryan's chest didn't come from heartbreak. He had already mourned the loss of his wife's loyalty, even if he hadn't realized it at the time. No, this wasn't pain. It was cold, calculated determination. He set the phone back exactly as it was and walked out, his mind already working. Sarah was careful, but not careful enough. Over the next week, Ryan built his case. He went through their home security footage, not because he expected to find anything incriminating, but because he wanted to know if she was sneaky enough to disable the cameras. She wasn't. There were gaps. Nights when she would leave for an emergency meeting and the cameras would mysteriously go offline for a few hours. Then there was the car. Sarah had always been particular about taking her own vehicle, claiming she liked having control of her schedule. What she didn't realize was that Ryan still had access to their shared GPS tracking app, a feature she had long forgotten about. One night, as she slipped into bed beside him, her hair still damp from a late-night work event, Ryan checked the app under the covers. She hadn't been anywhere near her office. She had been at Jake's apartment. Ryan exhaled slowly, staring at the glowing screen. She thought she had control of the story. She thought she had him wrapped around her finger. She was wrong. Ryan didn't rush. He moved like a hunter, patient and calculating, letting Sarah believe she still had the upper hand. If he acted too soon, she would twist everything in her favor, playing the victim as she had already begun to do with their mutual friends. He needed undeniable proof, not just for himself, but for everyone who had fallen for Sarah's manipulative lies. So he got to work. The first step was duplicating her hidden life. If Sarah had a secret, then Ryan would have access to it. He went to work early one morning before she woke up, slipping her phone from the nightstand. He wasn't interested in unlocking it. He had no intention of invading her privacy. Instead, he cloned her SIM card using a discreet duplicator device he had ordered online. Within minutes, every message she received, every call she made, every notification that popped up on her screen would also appear on his. By the time Sarah was stirring under the covers, stretching lazily, Ryan was already in the kitchen, calmly pouring himself a cup of coffee. Over the next few days, the truth unfolded like a play he had already guessed the ending to. Tuesday night. Jake, are you awake? I miss you already. Wednesday afternoon. We need to be careful. I think Ryan's been distant lately. I don't want him to get suspicious. Friday morning. I can't wait for our weekend getaway. He still thinks I have a work retreat. A weekend getaway. Ryan had to bite back a smirk. He had been waiting for this. The next step was visual proof. Messages could be denied, twisted, reinterpreted. But photos? Footage? That was something Sarah couldn't talk her way out of. Ryan installed a small, motion-activated camera in her car, hidden carefully under the dashboard. Another in their living room, positioned to capture anything Sarah might do while he was at work, and the last one, a GPS tracker, was slipped inside her luggage when she wasn't looking. The results came faster than expected. That Friday, while Ryan sat at his desk at work, he watched real-time footage on his phone as Sarah packed her bags. Giggling into her phone, "God, Jake, I wish you could just be the man in my life without all this secrecy." Ryan clenched his jaw, but he didn't react. Not yet. He was close now. So close. An hour later, his phone pinged. The GPS showed Sarah's location, a luxury hotel, 2 hours away. She thought she was running off for a romantic escape with Jake. What she didn't know was that Ryan was already one step ahead, and by the time she returned, her entire world would be waiting for her to collapse. Ryan sat in his car outside the hotel, his fingers drumming against the steering wheel. He wasn't here to make a scene. That would be too easy, too predictable. Sarah would expect anger. She would expect an emotional outburst. Tears. Screaming, begging, but Ryan wasn't here for catharsis. He was here to end her carefully crafted illusion. Through his phone screen, he watched the live feed from the hidden camera in Sarah's car. "You look incredible," Jake's voice came through the speaker. Sarah giggled, the sound painfully familiar, but now hollow in Ryan's ears. "I know," she teased. "Come on, let's check in. I told Ryan I'll be in meetings all day. We won't be disturbed." Ryan exhaled slowly, his heartbeat steady. The irony wasn't lost on him. Sarah had spent months convincing people he was emotionally distant, that he was the reason she had strayed. And yet, here he was, watching her betray him in real time, feeling nothing but cold precision. He didn't follow them inside, there was no need. Instead, he pulled out his laptop and opened the folder he had compiled over the last 2 weeks. Screenshots of her texts, footage from the cameras, GPS records. A full, undeniable case against her. He uploaded everything to a private online drive, one he had already shared with a few key people, her boss, her closest friends, a handful of family members. Sarah had spent months destroying his reputation, painting him as the detached, unloving husband. Ryan was about to flip the script. As the hours passed, he waited, checking his phone occasionally. Sarah and Jake had settled into their suite, enjoying their romantic getaway, while oblivious to the storm Ryan had already set in motion. Then, at precisely 5 p.m., he struck. A simple post on social media. Concise, factual, and damning. "I let her have her say. Now, here's the real story." Attached were screenshots, timestamps, undeniable proof of her affair. He didn't embellish. He didn't need to. The truth was brutal enough on its own. The reaction was instant. Comments flooded in. Shock, betrayal, outrage. Friends who had once believed Sarah's lies were suddenly backpedaling, apologizing. Her boss, who had always held Sarah in high regard, immediately revoked her invitation to an upcoming promotion panel. Ryan smirked. By the time Sarah and Jake strolled back into the hotel lobby later that evening, her phone was blowing up. "Oh my God," she whispered, her fingers trembling as she scrolled through the messages. Hundreds of notifications. Jake frowned, looking over her shoulder. What the hell is this? And then, just as Ryan had planned, Sarah's entire world began to collapse. Sarah's fingers trembled as she scrolled through her phone, her perfectly planned world crumbling with every new notification. Messages poured in, some from friends, some from family, but all of them carried the same theme: shock, disgust, betrayal. "Sarah, what the hell is this?" Jake's voice was sharp, cutting through the thick silence between them. She looked up at him, wide-eyed, but words failed her. She was too stunned to lie, too caught off guard to spin the story in her favor. Jake snatched the phone from her hand, his brows furrowing as he scrolled through the evidence. Screenshots? GPS logs? Camera footage? What the f— He stopped mid-sentence, his face paling as he read the caption on Ryan's social media post. "I let her have her say. Now, here's the real story." The weight of it sank in immediately. Sarah's betrayal wasn't just exposed. It was laid out for the world to see in cold, indisputable truth. She wasn't the victim. She wasn't the heartbroken wife of an emotionally distant husband. She was the liar, the cheater, the fraud. Panic set in. Sarah turned to Jake, clutching his arm. "We can fix this. We just have to—" Jake cut her off, stepping back as if she were contagious. "Oh, hell no, don't lump me into this mess." Sarah's stomach twisted. "Jake, you told me he was clueless," Jake hissed. "That he didn't care. That you had it under control, but he was watching us the whole damn time?" His voice rose, drawing attention from other hotel guests. Sarah's hands shook as she tried to think, tried to find a way to regain control, but she had none. Ryan had taken everything from her in one calculated move. And then, as if the universe wanted to drive the dagger even deeper, her phone rang. Her boss. She hesitated, then answered. "Sarah?" His voice was clipped, formal, cold. "We won't be needing you at the quarterly panel next month. In light of the situation, we feel it's best if we discuss your position at a later time." The line went dead. Her career, her reputation, gone. Sarah's breath came in sharp gasps as reality set in. She turned back to Jake, but he was already walking away. Jake went, I'm out," he called over his shoulder, not even sparing her a second glance. And just like that, she had no one. Ryan sat in his living room, watching the chaos unfold in real time. Sarah had underestimated him. She thought he would react emotionally, impulsively, that he would throw a tantrum, beg her to stay, or crumble beneath her betrayal. But Ryan wasn't weak. He had given her enough rope to hang herself, and she had done exactly that. His phone buzzed with messages from friends, family, even a few co-workers. "Man, I can't believe she did this to you. If you ever want to grab a drink, it's on me. You deserved better. We all see the truth now. Bro, this is legendary. You handled it like a king." But there was one message that stood out. "Sarah, Ryan, please, call me. We need to talk." He stared at the text, letting it sit there, unanswered. She had lied to his face. She had painted him as a villain to justify her affair. And now, when the world had turned against her, she was suddenly desperate to talk? Ryan smirked. Without hesitation, he pressed block. Sarah was nothing but a ghost now. And Ryan? He walked away without looking back. The end.